And once again, this is Women Wrestlers You Should Know, commemorating Women's History Month 2023, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. So, at the very least, please like and subscribe. I'm Randy Ritchie, and this is part 2 about Chyna. Something I hate is all these articles talking about the fall of Chyna. Why, in all this wokeness, are these woke people so happy about the fall of Chyna rather than the rise of Chyna? You know, the rise of Joanie Lauer, or the true story about Joanie Lauer. Why does it have to be the negative, you know? All right. Yesterday I told you we would talk about what we know about her childhood and how I'm going to connect the dots to kind of being raised similarly. The construction of the ninth wonder of the world. This is from a blog called Chaos and Pain from a year ago, and I like the way this guy writes, so just bear with me. He writes straightforward, so don't try to cancel me as I'm quoting. Like any other jack professional weirdo, Chyna had a rough childhood. Her parents were true blue, white trash shit bags in the disgusting hovel town of Rochester, New York, a town famous for little other than gang violence, an astonishing crime rate for a backwater town, and having remarkably low wages compared to the cost of housing. Well, let's talk about that for a second, you know. When you're raised like that, all you have sometimes is your dreams to keep you going, you know. She knew that one way, shape, or form, for her own reckoning, she had to achieve, and she had to achieve in a big way. This guy goes on to say, Chyna's parents were the type of red-blooded Americans who only shopped at Sears. Walmart hadn't made it to New York by that point, so imagine a far more disgusting version of Wally World, and you get the picture. They beat the dog shit out of each other to country music while drunk, and who begged for money from their parents and neighbors for groceries because drinking Steel Reserve apparently is not a paying gig. After kicking Chyna out of the house at 16 over a bit of weed discovered in Chyna's room, her dirty water garbage mom never saw her again. Though she maintains, and I've seen this video, or video footage, though she maintains to this day she was Mother of the Year every year Chyna was alive, and I guess she's also made these quotes on Facebook after poor Joanie passes. So I get it. I got kicked out at 15 years old. I didn't have another parent to go to because my parents stayed together. At the time, you don't have time to think about the self-esteem issues and why and all that stuff, but imagine looking at a 15-year-old kid or a 16-year-old girl, for that matter, you know, and think of the damage that something like that does to their self-esteem, which is already effed up because she was grown and raised in an alcoholic fucking home. This guy goes on to say her home life wasn't the only misfortune in her life. However, like Dave Chappelle did when growing up, Chyna only owned 3 outfits per year and had a jawline that made Jay Leno look weak chin as hell by comparison. This is what I like. Fun fact for the Redditors. Not only do steroids do nothing whatsoever for your jawline, that's growth hormone dipshits, but big-ass jawlines are often the reason chicks compete in sports anyway, not the result of gear use. Their bodies produce more growth hormone and testosterone naturally than the femme chicks. In any event, she had it rough from a very conceivable angle, yet she still managed not to shoot up her high school or commit suicide. And that is saying a lot. What happens in that situation? You have no sense of right or wrong. And if you do have a sense of right or wrong, it's a glimpse from a grandparent or somebody like that you can kind of have in your head and keep you as some sort of moral compass while you're learning to survive. Survival mode is never a good place to be. And when you're that age and you have nothing, including a home or no place to call home, your moral compass is fucked. So after moving in with her biological father, she finished high school, which is a feat on its own. I tried to go back to high school myself when I was 15 years old, 16 years old. I was working in a bowling alley full time, going to a meeting a day and working full time. And going to school full time and also playing football. It just burned me out, man. So God bless her for being able to finish high school again with no moral compass. And he adds, she finished high school basically friendless, finished her undergrad in 2 years at University of Tampa, and started working as a waitress in a Tampa strip club after a short stint in the Peace Corps. Why in the hell would she want to go into the Peace Corps? She had every reason in the world to hate the world. And look at what she does. After ditching Florida for a state not solely populated by felons, meth addicts, and mutants, Chyna ended up in Londonderry, New Hampshire, to lift with her sister at a gym with the hilariously inspired name The Workout Club, bouncing around other gigs ranging from delivering singing telegrams to selling cars to selling beepers to teaching aerobics. Chyna trained like a goddamn maniac. And I get it, man. With me, I even at one point tried to sell vacuum cleaners door to door. You look for any way to make money. And I was not saying I was, above doing labor. I did a lot of labor. But labor didn't really make the ends meet, man. In spite of the fact that her life was essentially a national tour of least desirable trailer parks on the planet, Chyna found a home in Londonderry and started dating her personal trainer, Gary Blaze, which put her lifetime decision-making skills rating at around the rating for Bucky Larson's Born to Be a Star. I don't know what that is, but it's not good. Not just bad enough to justify suicide, but probably bad enough to justify genocide. Not just because she started dating her trainer. She started dating a trainer in a backwater shithole who looks like a Jersey Shore reject with a serious love of synthol. Yes, that's exactly how he looks. But if you notice, if you're watching Jersey Shore, those guys grew out of the steroid face, irrespective of his own inability or willingness to train hard. So let's look at this. This girl who is 5'10", she's a big girl. She's in this relationship now. She finally found somebody that she figured accepted her. And I'll tell you, the first person to tell you that they love you, when you have the kind of upbringing Joanie had, the kind of upbringing I had, you believe it. You tend to believe it because you want to believe it so fucking bad. And it's just not true, unfortunately. He did set Chyna onto a path of greatness, however, so whenever he commits seppuku, that single saving grace might be to keep people from pissing on his grave. Yeah, this guy's angry, So, like I said before, I told you guys she started training at Kowalski's school. I know Kowalski, and I'll bet you one way, shape, or form, he ended up being a surrogate father, She was around her father, living with her father, but at the end of the day, he was an alcoholic. And you guys just have no idea what that is if you're just sitting back judging, I can't tell you what it does to your self-esteem. You have absolutely zero security. You have absolutely zero emotional, mental stability, no self-esteem. And I know it's even harder on females, None of the big names at the time like Eddie Guerrero, Steve Austin, Jeff Jarrett, or Foley had a problem with Chyna taking them out of matches in their minds. There was nothing to sell because she was legit as hell and one of the hardest workers in the business. When everyone else went out for beer, Chyna was in the gym chugging shakes and getting in a second, sometimes third lift for the day. When they were taking time off, she was practicing her craft wrestling and had finally given her something that she loved, that loved her back. Now, do you see what I'm talking about? It's not her being a mark. It's not her being a mark for herself. But she found something that she excelled in finally after fighting the voices and self-doubt and self-talk for all those years, Now this is where it gets fucked up. And I just can't stand Howard Stern. He's such a piece of shit. He's such a piece of shit chameleon. Just a fucking weasel, you know. And I used to like the guy, you know. But he is whatever he has to be to make money, man. That's all he gives a shit about. So now he goes into this. Of course, just like the low T crowd that now drives Star Wars actors into hiding with commentary born of the self-hatred spawned by being a shut-in whose mom makes all his meals. The trolls, that's mostly the idiots, shattered what one would think would be unassailable self-confidence in Chyna. The little white trash girl whose mom abandoned her after a childhood of abuse and ridicule didn't have enough hate to overcome shit like Howard saying to her, "You're a man. Do you have a penis?" An endless commentary in person and on the early internet about her masculine appearance because despite her hard-ass appearance, she was apparently an incredibly sensitive person. I'm not sure when we turned as a society to think that it was okay to bully fucking people online or in person, but especially you wormbags online, you know. And I really dislike you people that are now in your 30s, possibly 40s. They used to say all that shit online on the fucking message boards and feed all that crap put out by the Observer and whatever the hell else, Woo Wrestling, One Wrestling, you know, with your fake ass names. And it's bullying, no matter how you describe it. But today, you guys can say, "Oh, poor Chyna," and revel in that shit. Where were you 15 years ago when this was all going on? You understand what I'm saying? Anyway, this is the thing with Chyna too, and I remember seeing this, you know, whenever any of the boys, and once in a while you end up bringing your family in, your kids in the back. She was known as the built-in nanny, man. The kids liked her, and she got along great with the kids, you know? Just unbelievable, the fact that she / nicest backstage personality in the business. The nicest backstage personality in the business. You see, she achieved unbelievable star power, especially when you figure her humble beginnings, you know? Just unbelievable to me that this woman achieved it all in the first place, and even worse, when these son of a bitches online did what they did, said what they said to her, and now everybody wants to get traffic based upon the, you know, fucking poor Chyna train. Makes me sick, man. You know? She approached the gym year-round with the type of dedication that Tara Reid has for finding speedballs and professional bodybuilder display recontests. Her entire day was structured around training and eating. When wrestling, her sessions were wedged in around performing and travel, but she was consistently in the gym 6 days a week. Well, I'll tell you, just like Liv Morgan, you know, if you guys follow her on social media, when she's off, she's posting shit from the gym, but also posting shit from an undisclosed ring where she's working out, you know? Following the typical bodybuilding body part split of that era, Chyna hit everything twice a week, then added an additional half hour of abject misery on the stair mill with an 80-pound backpack on the days that she didn't wrestle. Like Goldberg, Chyna also used boxing for conditioning, throwing in an afternoon session of boxing work when she could. Now Goldberg, look at this guy today, you know, was fortunate enough to still be alive. Those two were cut from the same cloth in that their work ethic in the gym translated to immense physicality in the ring, though Chyna was arguably a far better in-ring worker. Yes, she effing was, boys and girls. She's a better worker than Goldberg, but Goldberg's a dude, you know, so the rest is history. Her meals almost consisted of fish, chicken, protein powder, and vitamins. She was compulsive as shit about her eating and training, and whereas her co-workers were off drinking and partying on the road, Chyna was hitting the gym hard and long as a horse cock on Viagra. Then, going directly to bed after chugging the shake. She was essentially straight edge, so goddamn driven and focused on her job that she let nothing stand in the path of her physique. That said, she did have Sundays as a cheat day, and she ate anything and everything she wanted to. Now let's talk about that for a second. You need to have rest to grow. And this is why you guys think it's a stretch. I don't believe she was on steroids because, number one, I'll take her fucking word for it. Number two, knowing her, I'll take her fucking word for it. Number two, if you look at Chyna prior to the big muscles, she had a perfect body and frame and something to work off of. She had very beautiful eyes. Maybe at the time her jawline wasn't what was attractive, but that was an attractive woman. Her jawline was different than most women. You understand? So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and keep supporting that, Now this guy goes along to now talk about, and this is the part that people don't really think about, that people don't really consider, he just goes on to talk about how WWE fucked her, and I have to tell you that when you didn't have a family, and she didn't have a family, she had a sister that she half-assed got along with, and they supported each other as much as they possibly could as girls that were raised in not only a broken home, but a fucking alcoholic home. I guess their mother had like 4 or 5 stepdads for them, and the father had one stepmother that wasn't shit for them because you never heard him talk about her or heard Joanie talk about her. Now she's got this success. It wasn't true confidence. Yes, people can be successful and still feel like shit about themselves and still be depressed and still be suicidal and still be alone in a stadium with people screaming your head off and feel alone, So Shawn Michaels, Triple H, X-PAC, and Road Dogg, and Billy Gunn were probably the first thing that she ever fucking knew of family, along with the extended family outside of that at World Wrestling Entertainment at the time, I'd have to look and see what historically happened, that didn't have anything to do with Chyna at the time. And I will promise you that whatever was going on, it might have had people's heads looking the other way and not thinking about Joanie in the same light they did. A lot of people in pro wrestling, I'm not going to say who in particular here in that scenario, the guys that I mentioned, certainly not Brian James, is a self-centered, out for himself guy. He's got a long history of that shit. He doesn't really have friends, and the friends that he has, he can turn on a dime and bury him less than a year after he put him over for being the best friend in the world. You know what I mean? But the thing is, wrestling has always been that way. When I first went down to Memphis, and these people were, in fact, my friends, I felt that. I felt that camaraderie. It was great. Like I said, you spend every day with these people, wrestling with them, wrestling against them. If you are running the roads with somebody, you live, eat, sleep, drive, work out with them. You get real close. You learn a different kind of tolerance for people. But the other thing that people with low self-esteem that come from the kind of upbringings that Joanie had, that I had, which basically is no love. There's no love. There's no support from a parent. There's no direction. There's no guidance. The fact that they are tolerable of you because you are told since the first memory that you have, that you haven't earned the right to take a shit in this world because they project all their issues on you, including the mother who was an enabler, And if she had more than 3 kids or more than 1 kid and stayed with the father for that long, she is a fucking enabler. She probably ended up marrying her ex-husband and all those other marriages too, just a different face on the motherfucker. I don't have a pubic hair respect for anybody that can't unconditionally love their children. That their children don't come first. And your children have to come first. And that isn't just making sure there's a roof over their head and food in their bellies and clothes on their back. It's also their mental, their emotional, their confidence. You know, how are you feeling? Teach them how to fucking communicate. We didn't get that. She didn't get that. So she finally found that. And it was just that once you get past, and I'm sure she had a lot of problems with feeling like this is too good to be fucking true, and when is the next shoe going to fucking drop, you know? And that being said, I bet that when that other shoe dropped, she wasn't that surprised because it was always too good to be true, like a fucking dream, you know? So she's achieved more than I have, and any successes that I've had to blow my mind because you never thought in a billion fucking years that you were capable of it, you know what I mean? It hurt, man, and it cut her. And I don't think it was intentional at first, you know. You couldn't get to Vince McMahon back then, you know. And Vince McMahon is always focused on the company. He's always going to be focused on what's best for the company. Yes, he's brought people back. You know, he's brought back Kurt Angle. He brought back Hulk Hogan, just to name a few, which people said would never happen and blah, blah, blah. He brought back Bret Hart after Bret Hart punched him in the lips. Well, again, Vince is a businessman. Business will come. But it's not a right-away type of thing. Joanie passed before she was brought back, you know. I don't know if her doing that spread in Playboy hurt her career. I really don't. Because, you know, we've seen how many other girls in WWE, and not the wrestler of the caliber of Chyna, that did Playboy, hurt her with the company. I do know that this, and this is from, you know, being personal friends with Chris Powell's King Kong Bundy. Bundy was the first wrestler to get a huge fucking payoff for something outside of wrestling when he became the spokesperson for, I want to say, Apple computers. I can't remember which computer, but the first computer that you could bring home, you know, the first PC. He got $500,000 for that, and Vince was pissed at him because he did it on his own. The company was pissed at him because he did it on his own. So, of course, Chris should have done whatever the hell he needed to do, you know what I mean? But he could have communicated with the company and said that, because people get so mad, and people are mad now that we're burying Chyna before, that she couldn't use that name Chyna. They're mad because Vince will trademark, you know, a name. Well, Vince's millions and millions of dollars that he spends on somebody that he pushes, by law, makes him an agent, if you like it or not. You're a strategic partner when you work for Vince McMahon, and you're a strategic partner when it comes to doing things while you're working for Vince McMahon. And he is entitled to your name because he's the one that paid and did all the bullshit and all the legal to protect it and get it in the first place, you know? You can argue with me all day long about that. That's not the point, you know? I don't think that's what buried her. I think what buried her was that I think that she had the latent alcoholic addict gene, you know? And when that happened with WWE, she felt so slighted. It's more than just a disappointment or getting fired from a job. She was cut off from the family that she'd been looking for her whole life in her mind. And again, that puts her back in survival mode. And survival mode, when you've had it all and lost it, that's another parallel I've had. You know, from 1990 to 2001, I was making $200,000 a year coming from where I was talking about. When you had it and lost it, well, that's a whole new set of fucking survival mode and issues. So I can imagine it would be very hard to approach her in the first place. And you end up playing, if you like it or not, come here, go away, don't talk to me, but you really meant fucking talk to me, anybody. And I've had that backfire on me before as well, more than one occasion, or I really needed someone to talk to, but I was telling everybody I was John fucking Wayne and no, I'm fine, you know. John Wayne's dead, you know. And it takes one hell of a strong person to bust through all that shit, because people like us are a handful in the first place. I'm not saying that we're unlovable or anything like that, but we can be a handful. But I tell you, the reason that people spend any time on us is that people like us that can be a handful will give it back to you threefold. And there are people out there that will get that and understand that. And when shit is bad or shit goes down, you want a fucking Joanie Lauer or a Randy Ritchie around. You know, you want them in your corner, you know. Now we'll talk about Triple H, you know. I don't know what I can say about it. I'm not going to hold him responsible for what everybody else is holding responsible for, the downfall of Chyna or screwing her over. He did, you know. They were together, and it's not like he's any different from any fucking body else. It happens. We all know 5 people right now that are going through it, with the leaving for another person, with the cheating with another person. You know what I'm saying? It happens all the time. Doesn't matter what walk of life. It doesn't matter which sex. It doesn't matter sexual preference. You know, it's a prominent fucking thing. And it sucks that it happened. But see, the other thing is, I know Triple H, and I know somebody that was very hurt by him, okay? He was very hurt by him, and Triple H was angry at him, you know? And the situation was they didn't communicate, neither one of them, you know? He's a good fucking guy, you know? But he's in a most high-stress position, especially then, because he was taking on a lot of responsibility in addition to being a fucking performer. And then being a performer who was moving merchandise and being a top performer and being worried about pay-per-views and angles and storylines and keeping that fucking DX shit going. And look at the run that it had. Well, when that started and you start grooming somebody to also run a company, to dick around with marketing, branding, licensing, training, you know, in addition to working in the fucking ring and working on TV as a character and working in pay-per-view, which are all different fucking hats to wear, you don't have time to do any fucking thing. And then when it all catches up with you, and I seen it happen with Triple H, because the man shed a tear when he and I talked about a situation with who was then my friend, who inevitably ended up fucking me over too, after I went to the wall with this fucking guy, where WWE actually rehired him because of my communication on his behalf, but whatever. You got to get used to that stuff too when you come from where I've come from and you're in the pro wrestling industry. I will guarantee you that he did not overlook or mean to take Chyna for granted, and that's what happened here, you know, and that's how I can speak on this, because I know and I've seen the man pushed in that very situation. And when I just said one or two things that should have been said years before I said it, he dropped his head like the most humble human in the fucking world and said, "I'm a fucking asshole. I'm a fucking asshole." You know? And he didn't cry like a bitch, but he's trying to hold it back, but he could only hold back so much because there was a tear in that fucking man's eyes. You know? So Levesque isn't the asshole or to blame for what happened with Joanie Lauer. You know? He just isn't. He's not that type of guy. He's not a cold-hearted guy. He's not a sociopath. He's not a narcissist. You know? He's a guy that was just too fucking into it. And again, the things that we read about Chyna and the things that are true about Chyna and her training, you know, it's a whole nother thing, which is basically the equivalent to what Levesque does, you know, and was doing at the time. You know what I mean? And the politics up there, and you can read about it. We all read about it. All you pricks on that made One Wrestling such a huge fucking success, and the message boards and all that bullshit. You thrived on it. If it wasn't for all that politics and bullshit going on, there wouldn't have been that fucking internet wrestling community boom, because you guys only loved the bad shit at the time, you know? You hated everything, but you sure loved to weigh in about it. It sure ate up a lot of your energy, and you sure spent a lot of time on it and a lot of time watching every fucking thing that happened, you know? But again, I'm not going to blame any individual for what happened with Joanie Lauer. like I tried to say before, but I'll talk myself. When I left the territory in Memphis the first time, it was really fucking hard for me to accept. That was the happiest that I'd ever been in my professional life. Hell, it might have been the happiest I've ever been in my life, period, was that work schedule for 9 months, working 8 times a week for 6 weeks at a time with one Sunday off, man. You don't have time to think. You just got time to focus on what you loved fucking doing, your fucking dream, and the training and all the other bullshit. You didn't have time for all that crap, you know? And when I left, you know, Ronnie Gossett, I'm going to say, he's the only one that cried, only because he was very sensitive. And he just told me then, you know, all these guys are hurt by your leaving the territory, but everybody gets their notice. It's a part of the industry, and we never say goodbye. We never say goodbye because we usually end up seeing each other down the road or back in this territory, which I did. You know, I ended up back there again. But also they don't want to say goodbye because so many of us have fucking died, you know. It was a group of people that are fucking off, people that have a lot of shady and hard backgrounds, you know, and we're all looking for that fucking family, and it's about the closest thing that we'd usually find at the time to that family, you know. So that meant everything in the world to Joanie, and I don't think she meant anything less to the people at WWE that loved her at the time, you know. But it's just the facts, you know, and a lot of people aren't capable of that stuff. And don't forget what I said too about the loyalty of a Joanie Lauer or even myself, a Randy Ritchie. If you can show us that tolerance and patience that we've never gotten, it's going to come back to you threefold, you know. So we're very caring and sensitive people. All right, guys, I know this has been a long one again, and I hope you're hung in there with me. We're going to do a third part tomorrow because there's just too much to be said about Joanie Lauer. If you didn't hear the first episode, again, I knew the girl. Go back and listen to the first episode. And I wasn't best friends with her, but I was more than acquaintances with her and have an understanding of her. And I had a bit of a bond with her. Again, this is being sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. So please be cool. Like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Take a look in the description of how to support Premier Pro Wrestling to keep the doors open. Now you know how we think. And the reason we think this way is because I'm the figurehead, and I just won't shut up about what's right and wrong and trying to bring people along in this industry today so we can finally build up, or these guys can be part of the build-up, or females be part of the build-up that I'm working with in training to be a viable wrestling alternative, because it's the perfect time for one. Especially check out our Patreon. Just go sniff around and see how much sense it will make to you and what you get for the different tiers. Thanks again.